Hello, this is Douglas Robinson with DefEd Software LLC, and this is part 2 of our video for our working session on creating a Cherwell map for comparing security group definitions for one or many security groups. From our first video, we created a business object labeled security group comparison, which had two relationships on it that we defined in that video for standard rights, as well as a list of security groups to compare. Between the last video and this one, I've cleaned up the way these tabs look a little bit. I've given a grid to our security group for comparison tab. And what we're going to do next is we're going to add a button onto our main form area here. And what I want to do is, when I create a new one of these, I want to take away this new security group for comparison button, and I want to change the way that this is being, that this data is being entered, because right now, as we went over in our previous video, in order to get the actual definition details to load here from the database, because of how long that definition is, it's about 145,000 characters, we have to use a one-step to import that data from a relationship, which works. But what I'd like to do is I want to have a one-step on the main form area, prompt someone for security group using the name, and then create a new record automatically, and then run that one-step automatically so that they don't have to click between these different items. And we're going to fast forward through this. So here we're going to test out whether this populates this list box or not. What if I refresh? Oh, it doesn't. It populates this guy, does everything it needs to, but even when I refresh, our list box doesn't show any data. So that could possibly be an issue with the way I've configured the list box. We'll go and check on that. Now here we're going to jump ahead because configuring a list box actually didn't work and we couldn't get it to populate, so I'm going to edit this to the next section of our video. Anyways, back to our main point, which was our actual map. The next thing that we're going to do, because right now we've got our standard rights actually getting compared, we actually run our compare security groups option after adding a couple of these like admin and IT service desk level 1, what we can see after this one step runs is a standard right comparisons tab should be getting populated with data. And we'll be able to take a look at that tab and see for each security group, I think I have to refresh this, for each security group, which rights are being discovered under each security group and how they differ. So you'll notice admin, for example, has view, add, edit, and delete rights to the device manager, whereas IT service desk level 1 only has view. And sometimes if it's just a checkbox under the administrator tool, you'll notice this will say yes and then view, add, edit, and delete, where really it's just being toggled by the yes flag showing up under the rights list. But either way, you'll be able to spot these differences pretty easily now when you look at this per security group. And we'll be working on at some point seeing if we can get these to group. I know if we do that under the form arrangement, I think, or it might be under the grid for that business object actually, we should have the option of allowing grouping. And I'm also going to check under that form arrangement bar to see if that allows grouping. Oh, yeah, it's showing up right there. So this should let this group. I'm going to tell it to show grid grouping and allow people to control grouping options. Then I'm going to publish this and we'll see how that goes. So I think what I'm going to do is after this one step runs, I'm going to add an option to it that will configure it to, there we go, here's my grouping. I had customized this grid, which is why it wasn't showing up. So I'm going to group by right name, and we'll see this. I think, I'm not sure this should be showing up. It's odd, it's showing this has 4 records when realistically it only has 2. It's an interesting bug. Anyways, you can see how these differ per item, and this kind of collapses this out so you have a better view of what the different items are that are being compared. And then next, I'm going to clean this up a bit, so we're going to go and modify our one step on that screen to run an update after it's finished. This is on the standard right tab, which is kind of odd. Oh, I think the reason that that association is broken is because we are creating those standard rights items right here. But yeah, we'll try, actually, at the end of all of this, I will just add a refresh action, which will take a little while to execute, but should be fine. We're going to get rid of that. I think next I'll also add this back as my main tab so I can see the items that I've added, since I can't do that as a list box. And then next we're going to test out our compare and see if it automatically updates our grid at the bottom of the screen after it's done, because we're creating those records in the background. Yay, it does. That's fantastic. I'm going to rearrange this. I actually don't need this type name, so I'm going to, we are working on a map that people are going to see, so we are going to update our grid so that this doesn't exist here, and right name shows up off to the left. And then the other thing we're going to update is going to be form arrangement. We're now going to drag the security groups tab back off to the left. And I think that's all we really need to update for what we've got so far. So we're going to move on to business object rights. So that's all of our standard rights that we're comparing right there. Next, we're going to go to the BizOb rights list. And here you can tell there's a list of BizOb right definitions, where it shows the ID, presumably the ID of the business object, and then a version, which looks like it's always going to be 1.0. There's a subtype field, and from what I can tell, that is also always empty. I'm just going to try to scan through here real quick just to test that theory out so that I don't miss anything. Yeah, that looks like it's always going to be an empty value. So on the inside of our business object right list, we have a right element, and this includes information about view, add, edit, delete. There's recall information. There's a lot of different fields here. So we are just going to pin this to the side of the screen. What on earth do I have as my background here? I'm going to blur that out in this video. Okay, and then what we're going to do on the right side of the screen is we're going to open a new blueprint, and we're going to start working on a new child business object. or group business object member for our security group right, or our business object right. We don't need create modified fields. Oh, but we got create and modify fields anyways. Okay. So we have a couple of fields. We're going to add in the business object ID, which is 42 characters in length. We're going to add, I guess we could add last mod by. We will add right information. So I'm going to add a rights list field here. And then on top of that, that might be more than 100 characters. I might have to adjust the length there. Yeah, that is, well, that can't be correct. This says length. That's a line 307. Okay. Selected 93. Okay, I'm going to make those a little bit bigger just in case. And then it looks like the rights we need to have logicals for. Actually, I think just the list should be fine. I don't know if we need a bunch of different logicals right now. That could be an update. If you disagree, you could comment on it and let us know whether you think we need to have Boolean values that determine whether or not a business object right has a given thing. Because I think the list view is kind of convenient as far as looking at it in a grid. So we're going to go with this for right now because this should actually be really simple. I'm going to add in this show ownership value, and this basically, when we look at this, that's basically going to be the security group option that says, is this different for the different ownership levels, like the different, are you a member of the team or a manager of the team that owns it, or are you the requester, or things like that. There's a checkbox at the bottom of the security group editor dialog. So I'm going to add that one. And then we are going to give this a default form using a wizard. We need to add a security group name. I'm going to import that. We're going to get rid of this field that we created by mistake earlier on. We're going to add name and ID. We're going to update security group ID because it's going to populate incorrectly because we grabbed it off of a different group member. Great. And then we're going to edit the form and remap it. And then we're going to update the grid. So we're going to have security group name. And we're going to add rights list. We'll probably also add show ownership just so we can see that one. Great, that's all we need for that business object. We are going to add it to our security group comparison object. We'll need a new relationship for it. Okay, fantastic. Now that we have this relationship, we can add it as a tab. So we're going to call this BizObRights. We don't need a new button on this tab, I don't think. The default view should be grid. I'm going to take away the new button here too because there's no reason why someone would be creating a new one. This is auto-populated data here. Okay, great. Now we're going to update our one step for compare security groups. And this is going to See, here we're stepping through children for security group for comparison. And then here we're creating the standard rights off of that. Let me look at this. So this, all right, so we need to be inside of this list right here. And here it's creating an XML collection for standard rights lists. We also need to do this for our BizOb rights list. And I'm going to do this here because our association gets flipped under the next action. At least in the editor it does. So here what we're going to do is we are going to see this. Yeah, this was a variable. We are going to create a new variable with data type of XML collection. I don't think we had, yeah, we had these modifiers. So as XML, find element, security group, find element collection, standard rights list. We're going to do the same thing over here, but with BizOb rights list. So we are going to add in def details. Is that the right one? Security group for comparison dot security group XML def details. Oh, right. I was looking at the relationship for some reason. We're going to do this. This is safer. As XML, find element, security group in our notepad file. That puts us, let me scroll up, that puts us right here. We then need to find the XML collection that exists right here. Ta-da! Alright, and what I'm going to do after this step, this happens once per once per security group. We are going to add a go to a record. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the original security group comparison record by using the parent rec ID of whatever standard right it's on, just in case. That way we get our association to go back to normal. And then we're going to step through the collection of BizOb rights. Using our variable for our BizOb rights collection, which is established there. And then this puts us in here for this variable, current BizOb right. That's going to contain this data, and we're going to pull out the ID using a string from attribute action, the last mod by using a string from element action, the rights list using a string from element action, and then the show ownership value using a logical from element action, and then that's it. There's some field list data here that can be used to track differences on fields. I don't know if we necessarily need to do that one at this point. We could, but it would require probably a different list of data. So right now we're just going to compare business object root level things, like whether you can add and edit the business object. We could do this like at a different level for the field list, but that would require, I think that's going to be an update later on because it'll be more complex. For right now though, we're going to create a new business object, which will be, I'll have to show all. For this point, we'll be creating a new business object for our BizOb right metadata. We'll be linking it to the parent. We'll be saving it. It doesn't necessarily have to be current. If you do, it'll flip your screen around a lot as it creates those records, and we don't want that. Rights list is going to be used with the current BizOb right and a string from element on the word right. So that should take out this value right here. Thought I had a last modified by. That'll work very similarly. we have a business object ID, and this one will actually use a string from attribute for ID. So that'll grab this ID right here. And then that's last mod by, that's right. Next we just need show ownership, and then we're done with the section. I think that's everything. I'm going to hit save. Then I'm going to click OK. Click OK again. I feel like that's everything. That seemed simple. I'm going to scan for errors. It seems simple enough. We'll run it after this and we'll find out whether it works or not. No errors. Close. Reload defs. And then I'll create a new one. So ideally, this button right here is going to populate standard rights comparisons as well as BizOb rights comparisons. Oh no. So we have, yeah, right after that first security group action, it tried to run. I'm gonna put a condition on that and see if it helps. So this failed right here, trying to go to the standard right dot parent rec ID. You know what I'm going to do, just to make this foolproof, I'm going to store this into a temporary stored value. So we'll add this one right here. Because I could just leave the value blank, but I don't want to go through and troubleshoot it a second time if it fails on that one. So we're just going to use a stored value for this. Where is it? Great, we'll try that. Now, ideally, I won't get an error message, and we'll see both of these tabs populate with data comparing the rights on the two security groups. Ta-da! Security group name is not getting populated. I need to add that. Oh, I thought I had a security group name variable. What I'm going to do is, hang on, let me find out where I was doing that here. Oh, okay, so this is on the security group for comparison record. I feel like I'm not on that association when I'm doing this here. No, this is on the, okay. So we're going to look at, I have an idea. So this, at this point, we're on that security group comparison. I'm just going to add to a variable the security group name, just so that I have it later and can use it right here. So now we can actually see all of the security group rights for IT service desk level 1 and level 2 and 3. And we can sort these by the actual rights, and I need to go and set these up so that they group. But we can sort these by the actual rights and see for each one of them what's going on. For some reason, it looks like these actually did end up duplicated a couple of times, whereas I think I need to add the business object ID onto this because we have a security group name, a rights list, and then it's not showing what we have the rights to. So we'll need to add business object information to this, which right now all we have is the business object ID. I think what we can do is we can get it to populate the business object name as well. So for that, we are going to, let me see, we're going to go onto our business object right metadata, and we are populating a business object ID. Let me see if I can validate that in a certain way. Let's see, we have other validation types. There's an option for business object name, but not ID. Okay, do we have a table full of business objects? We do not. So what we're going to do to get that business object to show up correctly is we're going to add a business object for Trebuchet Defs. We're going to pull in the business object def name. This is definitely read-only, and we are going to make the def name and def alias and def description fields searchable. I'm adding a prefix of v underscore to this so that it shows up at the bottom of my list. We'll give it a form generated or a wizard generated form and a very basic grid of, we don't need alias, we'll just put in the def name of the def name for the Trebuchet defs. We'll put in the def type so that if we're searching on them later on, we'll be able to find out which ones are which. Subtype will probably be useful, so we'll put that in as well. Okay, and then from there, I'm not sure what else we really need to show up in our Trebuchet defs list. I think we're good. Just type, subtype, name, maybe scope. Great. Now what we're going to do here is we are going to go into our BizObWrite metadata, and we're going to validate business object ID. It's not going to be enforced. And on conflict, we're going to use first match. We're going to validate this off of our Trebuchet defs table, where def ID matches and def type is business object def. So that this identifies a business object definition by that ID that's marked right there, and then we're going to auto-populate the business object name from it once it's been identified. So we're going to mark this right here. We'll grab the def name afterwards. And from there, we can add to this grid. So I'm going to make this full screen now. Then we'll publish this and we'll test it out. Now we'll compare. And as soon as it's done, we're going to open up the Business Object Rights tab, and we'll check whether it includes our business object names now, where we can see the difference between the different objects. And for some of them we can, for a lot of them we can. I'm wondering whether for these other ones, whether these are just the new rights that show up, because there shouldn't be a lot of these. I'm going to look at what the business object ID is on these. It doesn't show up in my list because it's a 42-digit ID. Okay, we'll have to take a look at that. So if we sort by rights, oh, really, we should be sorting by business object name. Alright, so we'll have to find out why exactly these aren't showing up, and to do that I'm going to add business object ID to my grid. And also while I'm here I'm going to add the option to let me group on this tab as well. And actually, I don't really want to run this again, so I'm just going to open the last record I created. Oh. Here we go. So this, if I reset it, should have our business object IDs. And it looks like for a lot of these, there's, just completely random or unique business object IDs. This one I believe might actually be the ID of this top record, or this main record, but there's a lot of unique IDs there, whereas there's also down here, actual business object IDs being repeated. So I was kind of expecting all of these blank ones to have the same ID, to where maybe they were just new records. Instead, there's many different ones, so I almost think I might have to search for why these are actually being blank, because if we look in here, we've got the business object ID, which in the case of these items is clearly a business object def ID. And then on some of these other BizOb rights, we have a business object ID that doesn't correlate to a business object def. So we're going to pause this video and take a look at that offline, because it might take a while. And then when we find out, we'll magically edit it in here in the next couple of seconds, and we'll move on from there. So I've gone into SQL Server Management Studio and I've copied the business object ID that's being used on a couple of these blank business object BizOb rights, and they don't actually exist for anything in my SQL Server database for Cherwell. So what I think these are is I think these are records for security group rights for business objects that no longer exist. So in this list you can see there's a bunch of security group rights that are included for business objects that do exist, and then there's probably a bunch of them. I mean, the ones that do exist, there's a lot of them, lots and lots. 378 of the 460 records, and then there are, numbers 379 to 460, which is roughly 81 items in here of 460 that just don't exist, that have security rights. So we're going to work on how we can remove those from this tab. We'll probably add a step through children action. Actually, we can do this right now. We'll add this to our one step, as I am speaking of it. What we're going to do here, at the end of this we have a refresh, we're going to add a step through children. Oh, our association's still screwed up. Did I put our parent rec ID in here? I did. So what we're going to do at this point after our refresh is we're going to navigate. We didn't need to show all. We're going to navigate to our security group comparison record based on our stored value. We don't need to make it current. And then what we're going to do is we're going to step through children on business object write metadata, where the BizOb name is empty. And then I think what we're going to do, I'm hoping if I run a delete action against those records, it'll delete the right one. Because I'm hoping this isn't like a delete command that deletes the parent while we're in a step through children. So we'll test it out. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to create a new one of these. We'll create a couple of security groups. Or we'll select a couple of security groups. And then I'm going to double check that I'm deleting the right record there. I'm pretty sure we're deleting metadata. Yeah, that's what we're doing. So it shouldn't delete anything from the system, so it should be safe. So I'm going to run this. So it should, theoretically, add all of our proper information. And then before it's done, it should clear it out, anything that's empty. So if this doesn't work, we'll have a lot of blanks. I don't imagine there's a scenario where it just clears out the ones, or clears out everything. Oh no, we still have a pretty significant number of blanks, so it didn't work. Next, I think what we should do, or try, is I think I'll work on creating a one-step that uses a search. And we'll create a specific group search that uses our stored value. And we'll delete them that way. I think I'm on the wrong record. Yeah, we're on security group for comparison, and we really need to be on BizOb write metadata. So then what we'll do here is we'll just add in a delete business object current record. And this should run against all of those empty ones. And what I'm going to do, so I'm going to run that. I'm going to see if this number changes when I refresh it. Hey, it did. Great. And so now we shouldn't have any empties. No, we don't. So then what we do is we update our create security group metadata action. And instead of doing this, we run our other one step. Oh no, we can't actually, we can't run that other one step. It's limiting our association here. I think what I can do is I can use a none association one step. That'll launch it. You know what? I don't think we can select the right thing from within another one step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. I'm going to close it. I'm going to go to the one step manager. I'm going to edit that one step manually. Because non-association one steps, no, I can't do that. Maybe it's because I'm on a record. I'm going to try going to my home page. I did just upgrade from one version to another, so something could have changed. No, I definitely cannot run that other one step. So that could be a problem. What I'm going to do, I am going to delete this. What I am going to do is I'm going to navigate to the very first item in that list, and then I'm going to run that one step. because that should work. So here we'll have a go to record action. Doesn't need to go to current. It's not going to make much of a difference. We're just going to go to business object write metadata to change our association. And then we're going to run delete empties. That should do it. So then we're going to create a new one of these. We're going to compare to security groups. We'll run our comparison, and now we should see our standard rights get populated and our business object rights get populated. There won't be any empty records, and we'll be able to see per business object on the BizOb rights tab exactly what's being set as far as security group rights are concerned. And we'll have, there we go, our comparison of security groups set up per security group, or per business object right. So you can see here's all your normal rights, and they're grouped up here. And then our business object rights, I don't have grouping enabled here, so I'll have to enable that separately. But that's our video. So here's how we've built out a map for comparing security group rights. Some things we'll look into adding might be maybe a report that puts these into a single view, although that can't really be bundled into a map, so we'll test that out separately. As well as maybe some general cleanup and some additions to this form. Thanks for watching. If you have any feedback, please feel free to submit it either in the comment section below this video or on our website.